So we talked about this at the tail end a little bit of our last one on monster behavior.
Yep.
But let's actually get into traps in your dungeon, because it's not going to be...
But not just any traps. We're not going to talk about we're going to talk about traps if you were in a fortress-like scenario where, again, to define that if you didn't watch our last episode, you have, let's say, 1,000 NPCs that are all geared towards summoning an ancient deity. They're all geared toward one thing.
Yes.
And so your players have infiltrated this and are now going level by level by level to try to stop this. So they're all working in tandem. So it's not just random trap.
And then we also have to make the distinction of, I would say, active traps and passive traps.
Sure. Okay, what's the difference?
So I would say your active trap is what you normally think of. Your passive trap is what you normally think of. You put a dart on the door, and then when somebody comes and triggers it, they get hit.
Sure, okay.
Your active trap, I would say, is, so we made it so that this corridor is a death corridor because we have arrow slits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we don't want the rogue to go, oh, hey, there's that trip on that door, and now that door doesn't close and make this death trap.
Right.
We actually have somebody that pops out of a secret door, and as the last person in the party goes, he seals that door and creates the death trap.
Right. So it's actually a
it's a trap that's triggered by manually, which means that your rogue can't necessarily notice it.
Right. It's not a trap.
It's not a trap.
It's just, but it's by design as part of the architectural elements.
But that is kind of a trap in terms of...
It's a trap, but it's not a trap that can be defined. Like, your search is going to be like, well, there's a door. Well, of course there's a door. We walk through it.
And then...
Okay, yeah.
Your active traps could also be your standard pit trap, but it's in combat, so
your
fighter could walk into a
Let's talk about that for a second. So we talked about this a little bit in one of our how to do traps.
Yes.
So if you were creating, so think about it this way. So you're creating a dungeon.
Yes.
That you're going to fortify so that you can then make sure that your like upper level wizards or something can do the research needed to pull in whatever, this avatar of something to cause all sorts of mayhem. So what you first start with is, okay, so the front door. All right, well, we're going to keep that front door where it's at. We're going to lock it. We're going to put an active trap on it. Next, the room behind it was like a 60-foot room. We're going to build in 2 sets of walls, make it a 20-foot hallway with two 20-foot two 15-foot hallways, right? 5 feet for the wall. And we're going to put arrow slits in to that allow most everybody to create this death trap when they get into the middle of the room.
Meanwhile, I would also put some concealed pit traps in that hallway as well.
In that same hallway, we'll put like a pit trap here and maybe a pit trap here, but we don't do it at the beginning.
No.
We want the entire party in before we start springing the death traps. And maybe what we do is we line, so to prevent them from like shoving a sword through the arrow slits, we've created a 10-foot pit trap along the entire... it's just a tiny little... So I guess you'd have to look at the measurements, but whatever. You create a pit trap before the arrow slit, so it's almost impossible for you to get to my guys. Now, some spells and stuff would do it, obviously. Good archer would be able to get through it, but I mean, there's minuses, there's cover, there's all these fun things. But now you've created a death trap just in the first room. So you look at it and go, okay, that's money well spent. Then you look at it and go, okay, if they get past that, we're going to let them just keep coming in now.
Yeah.
We're going to do like a rush move. I want you to keep coming in because now I can do something else. And so then I'll have I'll try to make sure all roads lead to one room. In that one room, I might have like raised archer places.
Yes.
That provide them half cover, but they're also up high so they can easily pinpoint anybody in the room. And they're away from each other so a fireball or something can't work. And then I would look at pit traps and I look at other traps that would get set off as you're running toward us.
And the closer you get to where they don't want you to be,
the worse
the more expensive and the elaborate the traps are. So depending on the level of the dungeon, you might actually have an anti-magic field in that trap now because you're getting so close that you need to die.
Yeah, exactly. They're getting to the point where it's like, okay, but again, they're not going to waste the anti-magic field at the first room because it's like, come on. If our 16 archers can't kill the random peasant coming in, we all have problems.
The trapped door and the arrow slits is enough to kill everybody under
everybody under level 5.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Perfect.
That's all we need.
Yeah, that's gonna keep 90% of the riffraff out.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is your players are like level 14. Okay, well then the next room is the next room that has traps, the next biggest room that has real issues. It's designed to kill players of level 8 or lower.
Yes.
Just straight out TPK level 8, which is nice because it's really going to hurt your level 14 guys. And then you keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. Now, when they finally get to the end of it, like if they entered in at level 14, the last room is TPK for level 14. By this point, they're level 16 or 17, mm-hmm. so they can still succeed. But the idea here is that what you're looking at is a coordinated effort. So it's not like random traps everywhere. No, it's you're now into a death room. We've made it so that all roads lead to this room, mm-hmm. and behind this room is the only way to go up or down, depending on like the orientation of what you need to do. Let's just say down for our sakes. So the only way to get down is to go through this room. This room is a death trap for like players of 6th level or lower. Mm-hmm. The next level, level 2, all does the same thing. It converges into a room, mm-hmm. and it has a stairway going down, but that room will kill anybody of like level 8 or lower. And you just keep doing this. Now, I'm not saying don't have random traps throughout, because you can do that. Mm-hmm. But as far as like coordinated effort, that's what you do. Now, one other thing on traps that I think is really key that no one does. You have a lot of interesting spells at really low levels that you can make permanent with a permanency spell.
Yeah, like a Ghost Sound was a great one of,
Sound.
Hey, you opened up this door, and to scare the standard peasants...
Yeah.
You have like a dungeon,
like a dragon roar.
Like a dragon roar or something other nasty with a horrific sound. Like, if you're needing something for material, go look up like a Vixen Screech, because that coming at you would be a fun thing for a peasant.
Vixen Screech. Okay, so but then here's the other thing. So after they get done with like the first level room, mm-hmm. have a button on the have a wall button. And right when the players open up the room, one of the guards takes his action and hits that button in the back.
Yeah.
And he's like a fighter, so he's got to rush up anyway. But his job is just to hit that button
first.
When he hits that button, no one really knows what it does, but it's sending some sort of... Again, magic is amazing. It's sending a message. It's sending a silent image. Mm-hmm. It's sending something down to a lower level that lets level 2 know or level 4 know, hey, we've been breached.
You could do even a simple system of that button or a lever mm-hmm. pulls a string which rings a bell 700 feet down.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, we have trouble on level 1. And you guys like, this doesn't exactly happen. I've been in, there are some places in Denver, not in Denver proper, but in Colorado. So we went down to the Springs and saw the guy who founded Colorado Springs house. And he actually had buttons throughout the house in mm-hmm. 1910 that allowed little flags to be pulled up so that the maid and the butler and others would know what room the guy wanted service in. And every one of these buttons throughout the entire house centralized in one location. And if you can do that in wood in 1910 with no real stuff, what can you do with magic?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Or gnomes, right?
And also,
in gnome engineering.
Also, the other thing, so you have a trap on the door that's an arrow trap on the very first front door.
Yes.
At the same time, could you have the same mechanism that does that arrow trap send an alarm?
Yeah, right.
Why don't you have all your major doors that you care about trapped? Oh, right. Hey, before I know that they're in the beginning of the dungeon now because they triggered that alarm.
Yep.
They got through the arrows because they triggered the middle part of the dungeon.
Yep.
And I know that they opened up the door to go to the second level because they did.
Yeah.
Because of that trap.
And it could not even be a trap. Now, if they search the door, you can say, oh, well, you do find a mechanism. Mm-hmm. Do you want to disable it? Do a disable device, and then they can disable the ringing of the bell or the lever that rings or whatever, or the magic potentially for it. Mm-hmm. But this is why also like in the main rooms where it's like, hey, this is our confrontation room on level 1. One guy's job is just to hit the alarm because there is no disable for that.
Yep. Another spell that you thought of that would be a fun one for a non-deadly trap was the Illusionary Terrain.
Illusionary Terrain is I think we did a whole episode on Illusionary Terrain. It's kind of like, think about it, like you walk in and it's VR, like, but in reality, whatever the wizard wants to think of. And
you believe that until you succeed a check to not believe it.
If you've watched The Witcher on Netflix, the wizard's tower is basically illusionary terrain on the inside where he's got all those naked women and there's no one in that tower but him. Like, there's no real humans in that entire tower. It's just him. But because he doesn't want to be lonely and he's got the magic for it, he just creates this illusionary terrain of a bunch of beautiful women running around, serving him food and doing whatever the heck he wants. But there's nothing really there. But anyone walking in, if they don't make their will save high enough, they can't see anything else. And they have to interact with it to even make the will save.
You believe it until you touch it.
Well, and even if you want to believe it and you touch it, you still believe it. So it's like the holodeck, and you have to forcibly not believe what you're seeing.
Yep.
So you could have a thing where you walk into, like, level 5, you walk in, and all of a sudden you're, like, outside. Or you're on a demi-plane of hell. Or you're...
Something's even simpler.
Yeah.
You open up the door, and you see a challenge rating 20 monster.
Yeah, exactly.
Just staring you down.
Yeah. And it's there. And in reality, there are other people lining the walls, but they're behind these illusionary walls. And so maybe they can act, like they can sort of act... And as the monster, right? So if they all, like, so for instance, say it's like, say you have a bunch of archers, and then say you had a manticore. And as the manticore shoots, they all shoot at the same time.
You time it.
And then...
Oh, hey, our magic dragon's going to use its breath weapon as soon as the door opens up.
Which is a fireball from a wizard. Right, exactly, yeah. So, I mean, there's ways you could disguise it. And eventually, over time, they'd be like, wait a minute. This isn't, and then they can start making the roll. And they'll still see the illusionary terrain, but then they'll start to see the real terrain behind it.
Yeah.
But illusionary terrain's a fun spell. It lasts for a day, and it can get cast every day. And it's basically whatever the mind of the wizard casting it wants to have. And so you could have, like, the 5th floor dungeon is just this crazy big open room with traps and other things in it. But in reality, it's this illusion. I mean, that's what it is in reality. But in what you see, it's this weird, crazy... scene that's kind of come out.
Yeah.
And you got to interact with it in order to get through it. And there's certain things that, that still affect you because they actually really are there. But the illusion is using it to look like something different than that.
And and it rewards your players of if you break it, you don't have to go through it.
Yeah.
Like, you still have to go through the room, but you're not having to deal with what they want you to believe, which is a lot more deadlier than what's there.
Which is great. Hey guys, we ran a little long on this one, so we're going to split it into 2 parts. So this was part 1 of how to use traps in a fortress-like scenario.